Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Chagigah, and we are on the very bottom of Daf Vav, Amud Aleph, going to Vav Amud Bet, the limud of Amud Yomi for Chodesh. Adar has been sponsored anonymously, and we are discussing in the very middle of the Machloket Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai as to the description of the pasuk that we had it's written in the Chumash after Matan Torah, but our understanding and both the understanding of Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, the Gemara was that this was actually done prior to Matan Torah when it says Vayishlach et Na'arei Bnei Yisrael, that Moshe Rabbeinu sent Na'arei Bnei Yisrael, and they brought korbanot. Vayalu olot, they brought korban olas, and vayizbechu zivchei shelamim. We don't have the whole pasuk written here. LaHashem harim. That's the last two words of the pasuk. That they brought olot and they brought zivachim shlamim. Right? Vayizbechu zivchei shelamim. So they brought korban olas and korban shlamim. Now we had so far a machloket between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai as to what this korban olah is referring to, right? The Gemara said that the shlamim over here is shalmei chagigah, which we're going to come back to hopefully at the end of this discussion. That's shalmei chagigah. By the way, what shalmei chagigah is there, right? What korban chagigah? You didn't have Moadim there in the Midbar. We're talking about smack in the middle of the desert before they even got the Torah. So what Shalmei Chagigah is there, right? So just a very interesting, cute thing that's mentioned in the Farshim, that when Moshe Rabbeinu said to Paro, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, to Moshe to say to Paro, he says, send my people that they should go to the Midbar, vayachogu li bamidbar. They should have a chag for me in the Midbar. So even though that it was not Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, but it was the Chagigah, the celebration that they had for coming out of Mitzrayim, the very one that was promised by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that send my nation out, tells Paro, that they're going to celebrate for me. So that's the Shalmei Chagigah. Fine. And therefore, remember, just a recap of the previous shiur, therefore, said the Bet Hillel, Shlamim is more important to be focused on than Olah, because Shlamim had an advantage that it was the only korban that was there prior to Matan Torah. Such important korban even existed before the Torah was given, as you see in this pasuk. So of course, Bet Shammai turned around and said, wait a second, did you read the whole pasuk? It says first, Vayalu olot. So if you're telling me that this shlamim was shalmei chagigah, I will tell you that this olot was olat reiyah. So I go back to my shita, says Bet Shammai, that olat reiyah is more important because that also existed pre-Matan Torah, and on top of it, korban olah is kulo la-shamayim, kulo la-gavoah. All of it is burnt on top of the mizbeach. It's a far more significant korban, and of course, they also had a raya that in Atzeret you have more olah than shlamim. So hence, Bet Shammai said that olah is more important, but their core machloket was on this pasuk. That's why we, wrote it over here on top. This olah, and this is going to be the core machloket of today's shiur. This olot that it says over here, what was it? When it says prior to Matan Torah, Jews brought korban olah. What kind of olah was this? We have korban tamid, which is the olah every morning in Beit HaMikdash. We have olat reiyah, and those are the primary two things that the Gemara is going to discuss. Some saying it was olat reiyah, some saying it was olat tamid. That's going to be the entire discussion today's Gemara. Yes.
Korban Yisrael brought is Korban Pesach, Shlomo. Why is that does not come up?
Because we're not impressed by any Shalamim. Well, yeah, I mean, Adam Arishon brought, a lot of people brought korbanot, right? Noah brought korbanot. Abraham Yitzchak Yaakov brought korbanot. It was not necessarily as a korban tzibur, but we're not impressed by just any olah, right? Even Bet Shammai holds that this was olah for sure. They just say it was olah tamid, right? So we're not impressed by it. We want to know if there was Shalmei Chagigah beforehand. There was Olat Re'iyah beforehand. That's all we want to know, right? So therefore, we have here, and let's put it like this. We have the Bet Hillel, right? And we have Bet Shammai for now. So Bet Hillel holds that this olot is olat hareya, right? That's olat tamid. That olah was olat tamid, and Bet Shammai holds that this was olat re'iyah. This is going to be our discussion. Now the Gemara starts discussing it. Amar Abaye. This is 8 lines up from the bottom of Vav Amud Aleph. Amar Abaye, Bet Shammai v'Rabbi Elazar. Bach changes the girsa over here to Rabbi Eliezer. V'Rabbi Yishmael kulhu sevira lehu olah sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar olat re'iyah havai. That Bet Shammai is not alone. There is Rabbi Eliezer. We have mentioned many times that Rabbi Eliezer is Shamutihu, which means he was from students of Bet Shammai. So we have Bet Shammai, but we also have over here Rabbi Eliezer, and we have also over here Rabbi Ishmael. So that's on one hand, and on the other hand, says the Gemara, Bet Hillel, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yosia Gelili kulo sevira lehu. So on this hand also we have Rabbi Akiva, and we have also Rabbi Yossi Hagalili. So now you have the thing, 3 each one. It is Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai, that's why we wrote it as main categories. And each one of them have 2 also supports. So says the Gemara, how do we know that our Amud today is going to discuss, we're going to learn a whole lot of side information from the discussion, but the entire gist of the Amud is going to be what you have on the board right now. To go through this 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Tanaim, and show how each one of them reads this pasuk. That's going to be our discussion. How do you know that the olah that they brought in this pasuk, which was prior to Matan Torah, was it an olah of olat re'iyah? Was it olah of olat tamid, korban tamid? So says the Gemara. How do we know this that we mentioned? Bet Shammai hadamaran. Bet Shammai we just explained, right? What was the explanation of Bet Shammai? That they said the reason that korban re'iyah versus korban shlamim is more important is because you did not have korban re'iyah. Bet Shammai said that we had the korban olah was also prior to Matan Torah, so therefore you can't say that shlamim was more important than olah because both of them existed, and hence you go with the normal precedences that re'iyah is going to be more important, korban olah is going to be more important than korban shlamim. Hence you have to spend more money and get a more expensive korban olah than that of korban shlamim. That's the Bet Shammai that we just said. So says the Gemara, how do you know? Rabbi Ishmael the Tanya. Rabbi Ishmael omer kelalot nemru besinai uperatot. Fix this, please. Uperatot Be'ohel Moed. This is a massive sugya that Rabbi Ishmael holds in the Torah. When the Torah was given, there were two stages. In Har Sinai, you got only the general gist of the mitzvah, and then the pratim of the mitzvah, little by little, we learned, and we learned it after Ohel Moed, after the Mishkan was established, which is going to be this week's parasha, by the way, right? When Vayakel Pekudei, finally you had the Mishkan put together, the Shekhinah of Hashem came, and Hashem starts, the last psukim of Sefer Shemot, starts speaking with Moshe Rabbeinu, Me'ala Kaporet, Meben Shnei Keruvim, from in between the two cherubs, on top of the Kaporet. That's when Hashem started explaining the mitzvot. But by Har Sinai, they only got the general mitzvot, not the details. Right? That's what Rabbi Ishmael holds. Rabbi Akiva and others disagree. So now, says the Gemara, Upratot bo'el moed, Rabbi Akiva omer, kelalot ufratot nemru beSinai. Rabbi Akiva holds, no, everything was given in Sinai. And we've mentioned this before, the Maral in Tiferet Yisrael, in Perek Samach Gimal, and based on the Gemara in Menachot Daf Chavtet, that Rabbi Akiva was a person that darshened all of the pratot of the Torah, tilet tilim shel halachot. Rabbi Akiva darshened from even the tagim, just the crowns of the otiot. So for him, me and you see the letters. Rabbi Akiva saw all the details also. And the Maral explains that his neshama was the pratiut of the Torah. So, and that's very interesting to put that together with our Gemara, that Rabbi Akiva is the one that holds, no, everything was given from Sinai. You think when Hashem gave the Torah, Hashem gave just the Rashi Prakim? No, Hashem gave the whole thing. And then by Ohel Moed, when we built the Mishkan, Hashem repeated everything again. And there was a third repeat as well, Be'arvot Moav, at the end of 40 years in the Midbar, when they were in the east side of the Jordan River, Hashem reviewed everything again. So that's the second line of the Gemara, Vav Amud Bet. Rabbi Akiva omer kelalot ufratot ne'emru beSinai. Everything with the details were said in Har Sinai. V'nishnu be'ohel moed. They were repeated when they built the Ohel Moed, the Mishkan, right? And then v'nishtalshu, and the third time they were reviewed Be'arvot Moav at the end of their journey through the desert, through the Midbar, Be'arvot Moav. Now, this is Abaye talking, right? Remember, we are focused on this Rabbi Ishmael right now. We want to know, how in the world do we know that Rabbi Ishmael holds like Bet Shammai, that this Olah was a Olat Re'iyah, was not Korban Tamid, right? So it says Abaye, this is the most complex part of today's daf, the next 30 seconds. So I'm just going to say it outside, and then we read it inside. Think of what would happen if this Korban Olah is Olat Tamid, right? Olat Tamid means consistent, every day, every night, every day, every night. Throughout the history, every single day, day in and day out, in the morning and in the afternoon, you have Korban Tamid. What's the halacha of Korban Tamid? In Sefer Vayikra, Perek Aleph Pasuk Vav, Mamash, in the beginning of Sefer Vayikra, it describes, which is, by the way, Vayakal Pekudei concludes Sefer Shemot, and it's when they built and put up the Mishkan. And the very first psukim, 6 psukim later, it tells you, right, that you put, you have to separate it to pieces, and you have to put it on the Mizbeach. There are a lot of details of Korban Olah. It's talking about Olah Tamid. Now, the last Rashi in Vav Amud Aleph also explains that. It's a longer Rashi, but the last line of it says, Matan demehenef shetan v'nituchan. The fact that you have to skin the animal and you have to cut it to parts, to different limbs, and the blood, the matarot of the dam, to put the blood in the corners of the mizbech and put the rest of it, and so all of those things we learn after Ohel Moed. Before Matan Torah, there's no details. So Abaye says, look at this. What comes out is very strange, because if you say, according to Rabbi Ishmael, that the Torah was given in 2 phases, right? Rabbi Akiva says everything was given back by Sinai. But Rabbi Ishmael is the one that says, Kelalot ufratot, right? Let's even write this over here. He holds that the Torah was given in Kelalot, which was in, two up over here. This was in Sinai, and then Peratot, which was in Ohel Moed, right? So according to him, according to Rabbi Ishmael, that the Torah was given in two phases. If you tell me that this Olah, which we know, everyone agrees, was brought prior to Matan Torah, then if this was Olah Tamid, it comes out that they did a Korban Tamid without skinning it, without cutting it to pieces. Let's imagine how it happened. They brought, Moshe sent Na'arei Bnei Yisrael and they brought Korban Olah. How did they bring the shechted, of course? But then they did what? They took their whole animal and they put it on top of the Mizbeach. No skinning, no cutting, no nothing. No blood giving, nothing. That's Korban Tamid. And then a few months later, when they built the thing, they brought the same Korban Tamid, and now it's a completely different Korban. You have to skin it, you have to cut it, you have to do. Is that possible that the mitzvah changed? The mitzvah changed? Hashem is telling the details in different phases is one thing. But Haytachen that they brought the Korban Olah, Olah Tamid over here in a way that would be quote unquote pasul, without hefshet, without nituach, without matan damim, without anything. Abaye holds that that's inconceivable. You can't do that. So because of this question, is such an important question, it's a strong question that says Abaye must be that this was not Olah Tamid. It was, Olat Re'iyah was not a chiyuv, right? They brought a nedava. Olah, you could bring Olah nedava. Once you bring a nedava, you could do however you want. It's anyways not an obligatory korban. You bring in korban nedava, gavaldik. So they put it with, based on what they knew at that moment. And at that moment, they didn't know that there's a mitzvah to skin it, to cut it to pieces, to put the blood, nothing. So they put the whole thing. That is the reasoning of Abaye on Rabbi Ishmael. The Gemara is going to challenge this, and we're going to fall off of this entire Rabbi Ishmael towards the end of today's shiur. But for now, this is the convincing argument of Abaye according to the understanding of Rabbi Ishmael. We're good? Okay, so this is the Gemara. So that's Rabbi Ishmael. So far, I have Bet Shammai that I know holds that this Korban Olah was Re'iyah. I have Rabbi Ishmael that also holds that this Olah was not Olah Tamid, was Olah Re'iyah. Says the Gemara. Now we're reading the words of this explanation that we just gave so far. If you think, third line, if you think Olah sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar, that this Korban Olah and the pasuk on top of the board that they brought prior to Matan Torah was Olah Tamid, was a Korban Tamid. Mi ika midi de meikara lo bayi hefshet v'nituach ulbasof bayi hefshet v'nituach. It turns out that then they brought the Korban Olah without skinning, without piecing it to pieces. And then after Ohel Moed was built, the whole thing changed. So they brought the Korban Tamid in two different ways, but the mitzvah doesn't change. The Korban Olah that they brought, according to the Torah's explanation, would be pasul. So Abaye holds that that's inconceivable, and therefore the shita of Rabbi Ishmael is that it was Olat Re'iyah, not Olat Tamid.
Doesn't that reconcile Rabbi Abaye's opinion that those requirements are general? Don't you have to reconcile that? That the requirements, skinning and stuff like that, in order for Abaye.
Let's wait until we get to the discussion here, and then we'll see if it's going to be answered your question. Perhaps it will. Well, let's revisit your question at the end of the Amud. So says the Gemara. How do we know Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Eliezer, holds like Bet Shammai. The Tanya, we learned in the Braita, Olat Tamid Ha'asuya B'Har Sinai. The pasuk itself says, Olat Tamid Ha'asuya B'Har Sinai. There was an Olat Tamid, Korban Tamid, which was done B'Har Sinai. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ma'aseha ne'emru b'Sinai. The halachot of Korban Tamid was said in Har Sinai, vehi atzmah lo karva, but it was never brought. So that's clear cut. I mean, that's, open and shut, clear proof that Rabbi Eliezer holds Olat Tamid was never done in Sinai prior to Ohel Moed, right? Because even though that the halachot were given in Har Sinai, the actual mitzvah was not done in Har Sinai. So if you contrast Rabbi Eliezer now with this pasuk, that's it. We know it happened prior to Matan Torah by Har Sinai. It says Vayalu Olot. So what Olah this is? It can't be Olat Tamid because Rabbi Eliezer says black on white. Olat Tamid Ha'asuya B'Har Sinai doesn't mean that they brought Korban Tamid. They never brought Olat Tamid. So what is this Olah then? Can't be Olat Tamid. It has to be Olat Reya. Hence, Rabbi Eliezer. This is pretty clear, straightforward. Open and shut is pretty clear. Rabbi Akiva Omer. This is important because this is our Rabbi Akiva over here. Who argues with Rabbi Eliezer? None other than his student Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says no. Karva. They actually brought Korban Olat Tamid in Har Sinai, which is literally this pasuk. This is by Har Sinai, right prior to giving of the Torah. When they encamped in front of Har Sinai, the pasuk says Moshe Rabbeinu sent Na'arei Bnei Yisrael and they brought korbanot. What korbanot they brought? Olot. Says Rabbi Akiva, you know what they brought? They brought Olat Tamid. And once they started it here, they never stopped ever since afterwards. Every day since this day, they brought morning and afternoon, they brought Korban Tamid, right? That's the Shita of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Karva, they did bring by Har Sinai Korban Tamid, the Shuv Lo Pascha, and ever since it never stopped, right? We're done with Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer. Now, we just have one thing to reconcile according to Rabbi Akiva, because there is a pasuk in Nach, right, that says that the Jews did not bring korbanot during the wilderness time, during the Midbar. It's a pasuk in Amos, in Perek Hey, that says, Hazvachim umincha gashtem li b'midbar. It's a question form, b'tmiha. Did you bring zvachim and olot for me in the midbar? Hashem says, of course you didn't, right? So says the Gemara, how do we reconcile the fact that pasuk in Amos says you didn't bring olot in the midbar, and Rabbi Akiva holds they did bring korban olat tamid in the midbar? How do you reconcile that together? Says the Gemara, Ma'ani ela ma'ani mekayem hazvachim umincha igashtem li b'midbar. The Hashem says, did you bring? Of course you didn't bring korbanot, zvachim and mincha in the midbar for me. 40 shana, all the 40 years. Bet Yisrael. So says the Gemara, that's not a question. Shifto shel Levi shelo avdu avodah zara, heni krivu ota. The Shevet Levi, who was never involved with the avodah zara of the Egel, they brought korbanot for themselves and on behalf perhaps of Klal Yisrael, but the rest of people didn't bring. So when the pasuk in Amos is saying you didn't bring and you did avodah zarah, is talking about the rest. But of course, Bnei Levi brought korbanot. Fine. So far, Rabotai, what do we check out of the list over here? We checked Rabbi Ishmael, we checked Rabbi Eliezer, and we checked Rabbi Akiva, and of course, Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai are checked off. So we only have Rabbi Yossi Galili left, right? Now, let's go through, but we officially only discussed the bottom half, right? We haven't touched Bet Hillel yet, but just between me and you, we know Bet Hillel and we know Rabbi Akiva so far, right? Says the Gemara, Bet Hillel, this that we said, verses 3 Now, the second group of Bet Hillel, so to speak, let's discuss them. Bet Hillel had Amaran. Bet Hillel, we already explained that they hold that the Olah was Olat Tamid, because remember how they said it. They said Korban Chagigah is more important. Remember? They said every time, 3 times a year that you go up to Yerushalayim, Bet Hillel, which is the halacha, would tell you have to spend more money on what? Korban Chagigah, Korban Shlamim. Why? Because of this pasuk. The main reasoning of Bet Hillel, one of the 2 reasonings was because I found a pasuk in the Torah that prior to Matan Torah, even prior to that, you had Korban Shlamim. And because it existed even pre-Matan Torah, it's important. That's the whole thing of Bet Hillel, which comes from this pasuk. They say, Zevachim Shlamim, Vayizbechu, Zivche Shlamim LaHashem Parim, is referring to Shalmei Chagigah, which we explained means Yachogu Li Bamidbar, that Hashem said, let them, have a Chag and celebrate the Midbar. This was the Shalmei Chagigah. And of course, if that's the proof of Bet Hillel, they cannot possibly be learning that Olot here is referring to Olat Re'iyah, because that would destroy the whole proof. The whole proof is Olat Re'iyah didn't exist before Matan Torah, but Shalmei Chagigah did exist before Matan Torah. Hence, it's more important. You have to spend more money, right? So clearly, Bet Hillel held that this pasuk Olot is referring to Korban Tamid. That's Pashut, right? Hada Amara. Rabbi Akiva, Hanabe de Amara. Rabbi Akiva also, 30 seconds ago, we explained in the discussion between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, we said that Rabbi Akiva, clearly, this is also black and white, he said that they brought Korban Olat Tamid in the Midbar, right? Olat Tamid Ha'asuya B'Har Sinai. The literal translation of the pasuk is Olat Tamid was done in Har Sinai. And Rabbi Akiva says, yes, it was done in Har Sinai. When? Here. So this type, Olah was Olat Tamid. That's Rabbi Akiva. So we're only left with Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili says the Gemara, the Tanya, we learned in a Braita, Rabbi Yossi HaGalili Omer, Shalosh mitzvot nistavu Yisrael ba'alotam laregel. This is what we have been saying, and we said it in the onset of the Gemara in Masechet Chagigah, the very first shiur, that we're going to discuss this in Daf Vav Amud Bet. So this is Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, Daf Vav of the Daf Vav Amud Bet fame, right? That there are 3 mitzvot every time that a Jew goes up to Yerushalayim. There are 3 mitzvot. We've said it several times. Here it is, where the Gemara discusses it. Re'iyah, there is the mitzvah of Re'iyah, as we explained before, which has 2 parts. There's the actual going up to Har HaBayit, and then there is Velo Yera'u Panai Rekam. He can't come empty-handed. You have to bring a Olat Re'iyah. That's A. Then Shalmei Chagigah, v'Chagigah, v'Simcha, right? Shalosh Pa'amim Tachog Li B'Shana, that's Shalmei Chagigah. And then there is V'Samachta B'Chagecha, which is the Korban Simcha, right? So this is Rabbi Yossi HaGalili introducing to us the 3 mitzvot of the Chag. You have Re'iyah, you have Chagigah, which is the reason that our Masechta is called Chagigah, and then you have Simcha, right? So these 3, says Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, each one of them has something that the other 2 don't have. Now, what is the thing that each one has that the other 2 don't? Says the Gemara. Yesh bere'iyah she'en b'shtehen. Re'iyah has something that the other 2 don't have. Yesh b'chagigah she'en b'shtehen. Chagigah has something that the other 2 don't have. Yesh b'simcha she'en b'shtehen. Simcha also has something that the other 2 don't have. Now, what are those? Yesh bere'iyah she'en b'shtehen. The Re'iyah has Sha'ariyah ola kullah legavoa, right? Re'iyah is ola, right? So this is, we will put it here, is ola, which means the whole thing goes up to Hashem. That's what that has. What's the second thing? Says the Gemara, Chagigah has something that the other two don't have. Right? Chagigah existed when? Before Matan Torah. Lifnei Hadibur. Which is exactly what we want. This was the main part of bringing this Braita, right? Which means Korban Chagigah existed prior to Matan Torah. This is where you see that Rabbi Yossi Galili holds that this Shelamim was Lifnei Hadibur. This was Korban Chagigah. And that's something that the Re'iyah does not have. So hence, this Olah cannot be Olat Re'iyah. It must be Tamid, and hence Rabbi Yossi Galili belongs here with Bet Hillel. You see what happened? Because he says clearly, the only Korban that you had from the Korbanot HaChag prior to Matan Torah is Korban Chagigah, and not Re'iyah. Where do you see that? From Zvachim Shlamim LaHashem Parim, which by definition means this Olah was not Olat Re'iyah. Because otherwise you can't say Chagigah has something that Re'iyah doesn't have. Re'iyah also has that. So it is black and white that Rabbi Yossi Galili belongs with Bet Hillel. It's inconceivable to say in Rabbi Yossi Galili that Korban Re'iyah or Olah was Olat Re'iyah, because then it would not be only Chagigah, would also be Korban Re'iyah. So that's Pashut. And now once we said this, let's discuss the third one also. What's the third one? What does that have to offer that the other two don't have? Yesh besimcha ma she'en b'shtehe she'asimcha noheget ba'anashim u'b'nashim. The Shalmei Simcha applies to women and men alike, because we mentioned yesterday, even though that it's a mitzvah that says shazman grama, and nashim should be patur, but the pasuk says ata ubetecha, v'samachta ata ubetecha. You should be happy with your wife, with your family. So it includes Shabbat Simcha, but Olat Re'iyah, women are patur, right? They're patur from going up to Yisraeli, and of course Chagigah, they are patur also. So therefore, we put over here that the special thing is nashim are chayavot. Great.
Does the woman have to
No, but they have the chiyuv of going up and spending time and eating korban of Shalmei Simcha. So says the Gemara, according to this mandamar. Again, we mentioned the Gemara in Kiddushin and so on, which is not the time for it now. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Ishmael, my Tama. Now, you remember I mentioned to you that Rabbi Ishmael, we're going to knock it out, right? This is when it's going to happen. We're going to now knock this out, right? How? Says the Gemara, really? Rabbi Ishmael, my Tama ka mukmat le. What was the reason that you said Rabbi Ishmael holds like Bet Shammai that this is Korban Re'iyah? What was the reason of Abaye? Abaye just said something of a logic. He said, can it be that if you had Korban Re'iyah prior, it's Re'iyah, because if it was Tamid, can it be that you had a Korban Tamid, Olat Tamid, prior to Matan Torah, and it was different halachot, that you didn't skin it, and you didn't cut it, and you didn't do Matan Tamid? Can it be? Can't be. The Gemara says, what do you mean it can't be? Of course it can be. And we just had it that it was. We just had Rabbi Yossi Galili say that this Korban Olah was what? Olah Tamid. And how do you think they brought it? They didn't have Hefshet v'Nituach and all those things. They just put it on the Mizbeach. So they did what they did. And then the details changed. It's fine. It's not at all a proof. It's not at all a proof that this was done as a Korban Re'iyah. So let's read this through. Says the Gemara, Kebet Shammai, Isal Kadatach because you said if it's going to be Olah, Sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar Olah Tamid Havai. If you want to suggest that it was Olah Tamid, mi ikamidi de mikara lo baye efshet v'nituach ulbasot baye efshet v'nituach. Do you ever have something that prior to the Matan Torah was different halachot than after Matan Torah? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili damar Olah Sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar Olah Tamid Havai. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili just 5 seconds ago said that the Olah in the Midbar was Olah Tamid, right? And Meikara lo ba'yef shed v'nituach. And in the beginning, when they brought it over here in this pasuk, Vayishlach na'arei b'nei Yisrael, it didn't need skinning and cutting and all that. And afterwards, it changed, and he was totally okay with it. Ul basof ba'yef shed v'nituach. The Tanya, how do you know? How do you know that Rabbi Yossi HaGalili holds like that and doesn't hold like Rabbi Akiva that pratot was given beforehand? Says the Gemara, the Tanya Rabbi Yossi HaGalili Omer Olah Sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar. It says it clearly, black and white, that the Olah that the Jews brought in the Midbar didn't need skinning, didn't need cutting, didn't need any of those. Because I hold, says Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, like Rabbi Ishmael, that kilalot of pratot were given in 2 different phases, and therefore the halachot of hefshet v'nituach and matan damim and all of that was not even given until Ohel Moed, until the Mishkan went up. So how did they do the olah by vayalu olot? They brought it whole on the mizbeach without cutting and skinning. And Rabbi Yossi HaGalili could live with this. It's fine. So how in the world do you say, based on svara, that Rabbi Ishmael holds that this was Olat Re'iyah? You can't. That's a rejected logic. Says the Gemara. It's such a strong question. The Gemara does the easiest way out. He says, you know what? Good. You asked a good question. Sami mikan Rabbi Ishmael. Erase from here Rabbi Ishmael. So therefore, this Rabbi Ishmael is X'd out. Now we have 3 Tanaim that hold that this was Olat Tamid, and 2 Rabbi Shammai and Rabbi Eliezer that hold that it was Olat Re'iyah. Zakburu.